Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's our News Digest, and we've got an ethical debate that's sparked by what we're calling the killer robot. We've got a city in the United States, San Francisco, that is, on the west coast of the United States. It's in the state of California, in case you don't know. They are going to start using robots that can administer deadly force. So deadly force means that they can actually kill whatever is causing a problem. I think what's really causing so much controversy in this, at least, is that they are robots. So if you're giving robots the power to kill, it's one step away from a human being actually making that decision. So it's worrisome to a lot of people. And that's why it's now something that people are debating because it concerns ethics. Is it ethical to give a robot the power to use deadly force?
Yes, indeed. And I guess this is all part of AI, artificial intelligence. And there, of course, are a lot of questions that need to be discussed regarding this. And this is just one of them. Yeah, do you think the police should use robots that can apply deadly force to dangerous situations like a mass shooting or something like that? This sort of reminds me of that old movie from the 90s. I think it was called RoboCop, where they had this half man, half robot who was fighting crime in Detroit. And then, of course, there was another robot that was totally a machine, but it screwed up and it shot somebody by mistake or something. But that's a question that's coming out now. Are those robots possible, and should we use them or should we utilize them? And that's the subject of today's lesson. So let's get to it. Let's read the entire contents, and we'll be right back. A new policy voted in by the San Francisco's Board of Supervisors has sparked controversy. The city is now allowing the San Francisco Police Department, SFPD, to utilize robots that can administer deadly force. Though shocking, the use of these robots is not unprecedented. In 2016, a robot armed with explosives was used in Dallas, Texas, to kill a sniper who had taken the lives of several officers. Praise was given to the Dallas police chief for handling the situation efficiently. Nevertheless, critics of the decision claimed that the police did not make a sufficient effort to find alternatives before deploying the robot. With the new policy, the SFPD has become the center of a heated debate. Advocates of the policy state that with the rise of mass shootings across the U.S., better solutions must be put in place in order to protect the public and the police. Equipping remotely controlled robots with the ability to contact and incapacitate dangerous suspects is a necessary step in this solution. Furthermore, the new policy would authorize the use of lethal force only in extreme situations where there is an imminent risk to the lives of the public or officers. Approval must also be granted by certain high-ranking officers beforehand. Several activist groups are strongly against the new policy, asserting that this action will further militarize the U.S. police force. Opponents of the policy fear that by physically distancing themselves from the violence, the police would be more likely to use lethal force even when it's not required. Critics say that although the intention of the policy is to protect, an abuse of power could be the actual result. Whatever the situation is, the police must act ethically and with the utmost respect for human life. While certain scenarios may arise where the robots are considered necessary, their usage could set a very dangerous precedent.
Okay, guys, let's get started. We have an ethical debate that was sparked by a killer robot. So we're going to talk about a new policy that was voted in. So this policy has been approved. It was voted in by the San Francisco's Board of Supervisors, And now there's controversy that's ongoing about this new policy. I have to say that I don't really respect San Francisco's Board of Supervisors. And most of their decisions have been a disaster for their city. So this probably is another one in a long line of bad decisions they've made. The city is now allowing the San Francisco Police Department. They're going to utilize robots that can administer deadly force. To utilize means to make practical and effective use of something. So they're going to effectively or practically put them into practice, these robots that can administer deadly force. Administer here is being used in a way to talk about dispensing or applying a remedy or even a drug. We'll talk about administering a vaccine or administering some sort of treatment. Or a drug. You could administer a drug. A doctor could administer a drug to a patient. Here they're going to allow these robots to administer or use deadly force.
You could also say to apply deadly force. If they need to use deadly force, that means they're going to use guns and violence to shoot somebody who's doing something wrong, and those persons or that person could get killed in the process. Though shocking, the use of these robots is not unprecedented. So this does sound kind of shocking, very surprising that the San Francisco Police Department is going to go ahead and use those robots. My goodness, what would happen if somebody hacks into their operating system and the robots start to kill innocent people in poor areas of town or something like that? So some people might think that's quite shocking. Are you sure you want to do that? You want to turn things over to machines like that?
Nope.
So that is shocking, but still it's not the first time this has happened. It's not unprecedented. So if something's unprecedented, that means, well, this is kind of confusing because we're using a couple of negatives here, but if something's precedented, that means it happened before. So if it's unprecedented, that means it didn't happen before. But here it's not unprecedented, which means it did not happen before. In other words, it did happen before.
This is a really great example of a double negative, kind of fun English, but we do use these. It's not a trick question at all or a trick way to phrase something. In 2016, a robot armed with explosive bombs, that's what an explosive is, was used in Dallas, Texas, to kill a sniper who had taken the lives of several officers. I remember this incident. It was horrible. The sniper killed quite a few police officers in the Dallas, Texas area. And then they decided to arm a robot with bombs or explosives to take out that particular sniper. To take out in police lingo means to kill. If you take somebody out, you kill them. So they wanted to kill the sniper who had already killed several officers. And police officers are pretty valuable people because they're out there keeping law and order and keeping citizens safe from crime and from criminals. So they were able to kill the sniper by using this robot who had explosives on it.
A sniper, of course, is somebody who has a rifle, usually, and they're trying to kill people. You have snipers in war where they hide in a certain place and they shoot at people, and you try to find the sniper. Where's the sniper? We got to bomb the sniper so he doesn't kill any more people.
They usually hide on roofs or in a window in a high building, and they try to hide their bodies so that they're not seen, and they can just pick off a lot of people that way, kill a lot of people that way. So, they were able to take him out. So praise was given to the Dallas police chief for handling the situation efficiently. The best part of this is they were able to kill the sniper without killing other people in the vicinity or in the nearby area. So that's what they were trying to do, to kill the sniper while also safeguarding the people in that area. So praise was given to the Dallas police chief for making this particular call or decision. Nevertheless, critics of the decision claim that the police did not make a sufficient effort to find alternatives before deploying the robot. So there were critics, people who were very critical or negative about this decision because they said, hey, the police should have tried some different options before, deciding on this particular one to deploy the robot. If you deploy something, you usually use this word to talk about moving troops, like military troops, soldiers into a particular position to battle against an enemy. But you can deploy satellites. You can shoot satellites into the air, maybe that are going to be providing satellite service. Or maybe you're going to deploy a particular group of people or, dogs. Dogs are sometimes used. They're deployed to find people who are lost after a big earthquake, that are lost in rubble. So you can deploy different things. So you move these people into position who are going to help you.
Right, so these people who were criticizing this action said, well, you didn't have to use that. You could have actually negotiated with the guy, or maybe you could have used a sniper or something like that, a sniper trying to shoot another sniper or something like that, or maybe you could have kidnapped the guy's wife and, threatened to kill her or something like that, unless he'd give up. Of course, the police can't do that, of course, but it's just an example of maybe an alternative they could have thought of. So people said, yeah, you should have thought of other ways to deal with this situation before you deployed that robot. But as you know, when boys get to play with those toys, those remote robots or something, there's just too much temptation to use the thing. So maybe those boys just thought, let's just use the robot and take that sniper out. Well, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.Hello
everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的课程是5月11号 Unit7 Ethical Debate Sparked by Killer Robot。自从 ChatGPT 引发大众话题以后，大家又再度关切人类是否有一天会全面被人工智慧机器人取代。当然，科技不断演进，谁也说不准未来一定会或不会怎么样。不过现在旧金山议会的一项决议已经让很多人很忧心了。如果让机器人操控致命武器，人类会不会是在自取灭亡？好，我们现在一起来看看学习重点。请同学看到第一段的第一句，这里 San Francisco's Board of Supervisors。比较特别的是，一般我们讲到市议会，我们会说 City Council。不过这边Board of Supervisors， 那其实呢也是旧金山市、旧金山郡他们的市议会 Board of Supervisors。 好，那市议会呢有一项政策是所有议员他们所投票表决的，结果这一项新的政策呢引发了很大的争议。 A new policy has sparked controversy. Spark 其实后面常接的名词呢还有像 debate， 引发了很激烈的讨论。这个讨论辩论我们用 debate， 这里呢争议 controversy。 再来请同学看到第二个句子，第二个句子这里请同学特别注意到的是句末的动词。好，这边呢讲到说机器人是什么样子的机器人呢？有一个关系子句，就是告诉我们这些机器人他们可以执行致命武力。 administer 这里就是一个动词，及物动词执行。好，请同学要特别注意到的是，其实 administer 大家可能会觉得有点陌生，但是呢它几个常搭配的受词请同学也要特别注意。像我们说学校举办考试，其实很多同学可能都会想到说 hold a test， 其实在英文里面很常见的是 administer the test。 好，比方说 Schools should plan to administer the test at a later date to all students who are absent when the test is initially given。 在之前疫情严重的时候，有很多人是被迫不能去上学的，如果因此影响他们考试的权益，这时候呢我们的教育单位常常都会规定说学校要提供给学生补考的机会， administer the test。 学校要再办一次考试。那再来，请同学看到第三句，though shocking， 要请同学特别注意的是，其实这是一个省略句。那主词呢，一样是后面的 the use of these robots。这件事情就是使用机器人这件事，很令人震惊主词省略掉了。好，那再来，我们请同学看到第四个句子，这个机器人它怎么样呢？ Armed with explosives。那 be armed with 其实呢，就是它带有什么，它有什么样子的配备，有什么样子的装备。A robot armed with explosives。所以这个机器人它其实身上是有炸药的。好，再来，我们请同学看到第六个句子，请同学看到最后面这里 before deploying the robot， 动词这个 deploy 所指的就是部署，你要把机器人部署出去，让他们做这件危险的事。可是到底做这个决策之前，有没有先想过有没有其他的替代方案 alternatives？ 这个名词请同学也画起来 alternatives 替代方案。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue talking about this ethical debate which was sparked by a killer robot. We've got a couple of situations here. First of all, the San Francisco Police Department, the Board of Supervisors there, have given the green light to using robots to fight violent criminals, and these robots can administer deadly force. This has happened before because we did mention another case in which a robot was used to take out a sniper who was shooting police officers. But remember, even though that was effective and they killed the sniper, critics said, well, you should have thought of other solutions. It's possible that the robot you used and the explosive you used could have harmed lots of innocent people. You should have thought of other alternatives.
Well, that was their criticism. Everyone has an opinion, especially after the fact. I'm sure the families of the officers that were killed by this sniper were happy that the sniper was put down any way they could. That's a tough thing to take. So, yeah, these are advocates of the policy. Advocates of the policy state that with the rise of mass shootings across the U.S., better solutions must be put in place in order to protect the public and the police. So if you're an advocate of something, you're somebody who is supporting a particular social policy or a campaign that's being played out in the public. So they are for this policy. They support this policy. They think that it's a good thing to put in place, to use robots that can administer deadly force. They think that because of the rise of mass shootings, that we need better solutions to put in place. I'm not so sure that turning over that kind of authority and judgment to a robot is the best policy going forward. But they're going to try it in San Francisco, and we're going to see whether it works or not. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Equipping remotely controlled robots with the ability to contact and incapacitate dangerous subjects or suspects is a necessary step in this solution. Before we go on, though, we should probably talk about this word advocate, which is a person. This is a noun form of this word, advocate. Again, it's somebody who speaks out in favor of a particular policy. It's also a verb, but we pronounce it differently. So you need to be very aware of the pronunciation to know which form of the word it is. If it's a noun, it's advocate. And if it's a verb, it's advocate. So they're completely different. They're very, very different. So advocates, more of an is sound to that if it's the noun form.
Yep, advocates advocate different kinds of policies. And in this particular case, we've got people who are supportive of the policy. They say, yeah, we've got these mass shootings in the U.S., so something needs to be done. We need to use something to restore public order and to protect the police. And again, equipping those remotely controlled robots with the ability to administer deadly force or to contact and incapacitate dangerous suspects is a necessary step in this solution. So if you incapacitate something, you basically stop it from doing what it's doing. A capacity is the ability to do something. So if you incapacitate something, you take away its ability to do something. And in this case, we want to incapacitate those dangerous suspects or those criminals who are suspected of committing this crime, which means you basically take their gun away from them or shoot them or make them pass out or something like that.
When I see this word incapacitate, I typically just think of someone not being able to move. So he's incapacitated at the moment. Sometimes you'll call and want to talk to somebody in business, and maybe this secretary on the phone says, oh, he's incapacitated at the moment. They might be busy. They might be sleeping. Who knows? But they're not able to do whatever they're supposed to be doing. Incapacitate here just means they want to stop these dangerous suspects from shooting and hurting other people. So it says, furthermore, a new policy would authorize the use of lethal force only in extreme situations where there is an imminent risk to the lives of the public or officers. If you authorize something, you give somebody the authority to do something. So usually only authorities can authorize the use of lethal force. So authorize, again, just to give permission for something to happen. And in order to authorize something, you have to be someone who has the authority to do that. Lethal force, lethal means death. So if you're talking about lethal force, you're talking about force that would kill somebody. If a snake's bite is lethal, it means it will kill you. So just remember, lethal means sufficient to cause death.
Exactly. And of course, we've got this imminent risk to the lives of the public or officers, which means there's going to be violence happening soon.
Yeah.
Imminent means happening soon, like there's an imminent typhoon coming. Take cover or you might get blown away. And approval must also be granted by certain high-ranking officers beforehand. So that's what the Board of Supervisors decided. Well, if you guys want to use this robot to apply lethal force, you need to talk to your supervisors or your higher-ranking officers beforehand or ahead of time.
And that's what beforehand means. Just before an action or an event or doing something in advance. You need to book a hotel room beforehand. Otherwise, if you try to get one the same weekend that you need it, you might be out of luck. I was just looking at hotel rooms. I wanted to go to Alishan, and I know now that I needed to book it in advance. I should have thought about that beforehand because now it's too late. So beforehand is a word that we use quite often, especially if we're talking about doing something in advance. So approval for this ability to use lethal force would have to be granted or given by certain high-ranking officials or officers beforehand, before the event actually took place.
Now, several activist groups are strongly against the new policy, asserting that this action will further militarize the U.S. police force. If you assert something, you state something strongly and plainly. You need to be assertive if you want to ask your boss for a raise, for example. And yes, indeed, they're talking about the U.S. police force being more like the military or being like the army, and people are opposed to that. So a person who is opposed to something or who is against something is an opponent. So opponents of the policy fear that by physically distancing themselves from the violence, the police would be more likely to use lethal force even when it's not required. So they're not directly involved with it. So again, if you send a robot to kill somebody, it's a lot easier than doing it yourself.
Yeah. Totally. So critics say that although the intention of the policy is to protect, an abuse of power could be the actual result. That's what usually happens with the policies in San Francisco. I think the intention of some of the policies is good, but they end up being bad as a whole. So whatever the situation is, the police must act ethically and with the utmost or the greatest amount of respect for human life. While certain scenarios or situations may arise where the robots are considered necessary, their usage could set a very dangerous precedent. Remember, we talked about what a precedent is. A precedent is something that happens and can be repeated at a later date. So a precedent's an earlier event or action that's regarded as kind of an example that could happen in the future. Hopefully, some really sane minds will make a decision about this. I know they've already put the policy into effect, but we hope that perhaps they rethink it. I don't think it's quite what they hope it will do.
Well, you can all discuss this amongst yourselves, whether these kinds of robots would be effective here in Taiwan with the police force. And that brings us to the end of our discussion, but we need to hear from our Chinese teacher once again.
第二段说明必要性，还有动用武装机器人的2个条件，请同学特别要注意哦。好，在这里呢，老师要请同学先注意到 advocates 这个名词。所谓 advocate 就是主张做什么事情或倡导做什么事情的人。那它其实相反词呢，在下面的句子我们可以看得到，就是反对人士，就是 opponent O-P-P-O-N-E-N-T。好，再来呢，这里会主张呢，要使用这种可以动用、可以配有武装设备的、武装配备的机器人的这些倡议的人士。他们呢，其实所关注的是大规模的枪击事件 mass shootings。那他们觉得说，要解决这样子的问题，其实呢，是应该要有一些替代的方案的，一些解决方案的。Better solutions must be put in place。应该要有一些，要执行一些解决方案。A solution is in place， 那就表示现在是有这些解决方案的。A good solution is in place， 就表示呢，我们现在呢有好的解决方案。那再来呢，请同学看到，其实有的人知道说，动用这种武装机器人，社会大众是会担心的，所以他们就会提出说，我们是有设限的。这些武装机器人要动用之前，其实要满足一些特定的条件，比方说，现在情况危急，在一些比较极端的状况。所以请同学看到第3个句子 Only in extreme situations， 在一些极端的状况。什么样的状况呢？后面用关系副词 where， 就是我们看到有立即性的风险 an imminent risk， 立即性的风险。那此外呢我们知道说，其实要有一些比较高阶的官员的授权 Approval must be granted， Approval must also be granted， 一些比较高阶的官员，他们要事先同意。好，再来，请同学看到第3段这个部分。看到第3段，其实我们就可以看到为什么会有人反对。讲到第3个句子，很多人其实是担心权力的滥用 ，an abuse of power。abuse of power 就是权力滥用。好，以上是我们针对这个武装机器人所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it, guys. We're glad you joined us for our News Digest. We hope you'll join us for our next program. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.